to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Hannah and welcome. So today's video, I haven't done a book haul in quite a while, so I have quite a few books on the floor here. Actually, let me show you. This is just a little sneak peek of what's down here. This isn't all of the books, there are more, but I'm gonna go through the books now. I'm gonna show you what I got, and yeah. So the first book that I got, this is sort of the culprit of this book haul because I read We Hunt the Flame a little while ago and I really enjoyed it, and I didn't have book 2. So I got book 2. This is why I went onto the website to browse, because I wanted to get Weave Through the Stars by Hafsa Faisal. This was the main book that I wanted to get because I do want to finish the duology and just finish reading it. Obviously, I wanted to get a few more books just as the shipping was free. And then it just sort of snowballed from there. So basically the plot of the book, the first book is dual POV, and our first POV is Zafira. She is a hunter that disguises herself as a man when she goes and hunts in the coast forest of the Ars. The other POV is Nasir. I think I'm saying that right. Nasir. Our other POV is Nasir, the Prince of Death. He is basically tasked to assassinate anyone that dares to defy his father, the Sultan. Now, what happens in We Hunt the Flame is basically that these two characters are given a mission. The first mission, Zafira's mission, is to go and find this magical artifact that'll help bring magic back to the kingdom. Meanwhile, Nasir is tasked with bringing this magical item back to his father. And so you can sort of see where the plot's going to go from there. So it's a bit of like an enemies to lovers book. There's really great cast of characters. It's really fun. I'm very excited to see where this book goes, and this is the first book that I got since my last book haul. The next book is Kings of the Wyld by Nicholas Eames. So this is basically like a high fantasy D&D style fantasy novel, part of a larger series that I think the first and second book are out, but I only got the first book just because I wanted to test it out before committing. So the plot of this book is that we follow our main character Clay, who is a retired mercenary from a band, but then one of his ex-bandmates comes to him and says, "Can we get the band back together again? My daughter is stuck in a city that's being besieged by an enemy." So they get the band back together and they go on this mission to save the one bandmate's daughter. So I think this is a really good book. I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's a cool plot. I'm kind of intrigued. I think it might have been indie published originally. I'm not sure though. Next up, I have 2 books. They're part of a series. I have The Shadow of the Gods, which is the first book, and then The Hunger of the Gods, and these are written by John Gwynne. Now, I'm very excited about these books. I've seen them in quite a few places from people that I trust online, and basically this is like a Norse-inspired fantasy book. Apparently there's lots of world building in this thing, the characters are really great, and it is just a really great all-rounder fantasy that a lot of people have said is just amazing. So I'm very excited to read this. There is a 3rd book, but I didn't get it. I just got the first 2. So it keeps me busy for the time being. I haven't read a Norse-inspired fantasy yet, so I'm curious to see if I'll enjoy this one. I think I will though. So basically this novel is set in a world where the gods have driven themselves to extinction. There are 3 POVs in this book. We have a huntress on a dangerous quest, a noblewoman who has discarded her privilege in pursuit of fame, and then our 3rd and final POV is a thrall who is seeking vengeance from a group of mercenaries. Really excited. This is quite high up on my TBR list at the moment, just because I do really want to read it. Next up, I have Shadow's Edge by Brent Weeks. I already have the 1st and 3rd book. Now that in itself is kind of strange. The reason that I have the 1st and the 3rd book, but not the 2nd book, is because I found them at a secondhand bookshop, and the secondhand bookshop has really great prices, so I was like, I have to just get these and then I can buy the 2nd book. So basically this is an epic fantasy novel. This is the 2nd book in the Night Angel trilogy. The first one is The Way of the Shadows. In this book we follow Azoth, and Azoth is basically a street orphan that grew up in the slums. Now, growing up as a street orphan, he sort of learned how to take risks, and one of those risks ends up being that he apprentices himself to the most accomplished assassin in the city, and he has to turn away from his old life to then become an assassin. I'm very excited to read this series as well. I haven't read any of Brent Weeks' works, but I am looking forward to starting either this series or The Black Prism. Next up, I have The Boneshard Daughter and The Boneshard Emperor by Andrea Stewart. These are part of a trilogy or quartet, I can't remember. There is a 3rd book though. I don't have the 3rd book, I just got the first 2. I've heard good things about the series, so I'm excited to try it out. This is another fantasy novel. It's a bit more YA though. The plot of this book is that the Emperor's rule is falling and revolution is sweeping across the nation. Lynn is the Emperor's daughter, but when he refuses to acknowledge her as the rightful heir to the throne, she decides to learn the forbidden art of bone magic and claim her birthright and rise up to save her people. I'm a bit nervous because SJ Moss is here on the front saying it's really good. Next up, I have The Wrath and the Dawn by Renee Addy. Now, this book is again a bit more of a enemies to lovers YA fantasy romance book, but I am very excited to read it. I've seen it a lot on TikTok. Maybe that's not the best thing, but I love the cover and I thought I might as well just get it. Shahrazad has vowed to take vengeance on the young caliph after the young caliph murders one of her very dear friends once he'd taken her as a bride. The caliph sort of has this history of murdering his brides, and eventually Shahrazad decides that she is going to beguile and seduce the young caliph so that she can then take her revenge. But as she grows closer to the caliph, she realizes that he isn't entirely as he seems. Next up, I have Empire of the Vampire by J. Kristoff. This is an adult fantasy horror with vampires book. It reminds me a lot of Castlevania when I was reading the blurb. Vampires have waged war on humanity for nearly 3 decades in this book. This book follows Gabriel, the last member of a holy order that was tasked with defending humanity from these vampires. Gabriel is taken prisoner by the monsters he vows to destroy, and basically he tells his story and we get to see his life story from his POV. I don't know if I'm a big vampire fan. I don't think I've read a vampire book before. I haven't even read Twilight, so. It does have art inside the book, which I really like. Like, look at that. That looks very cool. Next up, I have The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. This one is another book I'm nervous about. A lot of these books are either I'm really excited about or I'm kind of apprehensive to read. The reason I got this book is because I've seen it in bookshops all the time, every time I go. I love the cover. It always like stands out to me. But the main reason is because I read the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin and it's one of my favorite trilogies of all time. So I wanted to try out some more of her books. So I picked up The City We Became. This one is it's got a very weird premise, but it's very intriguing and I am very curious. So this is an urban fantasy. There are 5 people who basically are New York's soul and they must defend New York. It does sound a bit weird, I know. But basically there's this ancient rolling evil underground and it's threatening to destroy New York and the world, and these 5 people must come together to save their city. It's a bit of a weird premise and hopefully I won't be disappointed because I love the 5th season so much. Next up, I have Malice by John Gwynne. I got 3 John Gwynne books. This book has sort of a Game of Thrones feel. It's got multiple POVs. It's got a lot of world building. So it's one of those type of fantasies, very high fantasy. When I was reading the blurb for this video, because this is the only time I'll read the blurb is when I'm making videos like this. When I read the blurb for this book, I don't know what was going on. It was a lot. So if you want to know what this book is about, maybe go get the blurb yourself and just read it. What I've gathered is that this land is in peace. They're going through a time of peace, but then giants start stirring again, and there's like these 2 things that need to back. Just if you want to read this book, if you want to know what this book is about, go Google the blurb. Next up, I have Camelot by Giles Christian. This is the 2nd book in the Arthurian tales, with the 1st book being Lancelot. I do have the 1st book. It's down there, it's on the bottom shelf, so I'm not going to be able to reach it. I haven't read the 1st book though. Some people say they don't understand why I buy books if I haven't read the 1st book. I don't want to read a book if I don't have the next book, that's the thing. So I won't read the 1st book until I have the 2nd book. Because then if I enjoy the 1st book, then I can get the 3rd book. I sort of need this 1 book buffer the whole time. We follow the story of Lancelot, a young boy whose only companion is a hawk, and we watch as he slowly grows up under the guidance of Merlin and becomes a Lord of War. Next up, this book I'm a bit nervous for. I've never read from this author before. She does have a very popular series. So I wanted to read Realm Breaker. If I enjoy this, maybe I'll try out Red Queen. But Realm Breaker by Victoria Aveyard. This is apparently like her first adult fantasy, though I saw some people still tag it as young adult, so I'm not sure if it's young adult or adult fantasy. This book has sort of a chosen one theme going for it. This book follows our main protagonist, Coraine, who can sense that there's a darkness growing in the world. One day, fate knocks on her door and she is told that she is the last of an ancient lineage who hold the power to save the world. Coraine then embarks on a mission with a group of unlikely allies to stop a dangerous enemy from breaking the realm. Hence the name of the book, Realm Breaker. So very typical fantasy again. We've got the ragtag group sort of going to go save the world with a bit of a chosen one trope, ancient magic, all that stuff. Next up, I have The Girl and the Stars by Mark Lawrence. Now this book I got because it was on sale. I got it for, I think I got this book for $3 if I'm doing my math right. But I had this book already. I think this is the 2nd book. I got it on accident. I thought it was the 1st book. So I actually got the 1st book now in the series. I'm very excited to read this. Mark Lawrence I haven't read from before, but I've heard he's very good. The premise of this book is that this planet is completely covered in ice. It is completely inhospitable, but there are a few people who still live here. The reason that the planet is dying is because the sun that it orbits is slowly dying. So the temperatures are dropping, everything is covered in ice, and people are really struggling to live here. There are ice clans that live out on the ice, and these people have to be very hearty and strong to survive. They have to work together. So anyone who is seen as a weak link in these clans is then taken and thrown into this hole in the ice. This book follows our main character Yaz, who is then torn from the life she thought she would have. Next up, I have Gallant by V.E. Schwab. This is a standalone novel, I think, and it has got a pretty cool premise. It reminds me a little bit, a tiny bit of Stranger Things, not entirely. This is a young adult fantasy horror. We've got paranormal vibes, gothic vibes, and we've also got a bit of a mystery at the center of this book, so it is a very vibey book. It's got an atmosphere. It would definitely be great for October, I think, for the spooky season. This book follows our main character Olivia. The only thing Olivia has of her past is her mother's old journal, until one day a letter arrives calling her back to her house, Gallant. When she arrives back at Gallant, no one is expecting her there, and it's sort of hostile, the environment she comes back to. Her cousin's living there, sort of the lord of the house, and he's not that excited to see her, but Olivia isn't ready to leave the place that she calls home. Olivia is determined to uncover the secrets that are hiding within Gallant's walls and uncover what unraveled her family generations ago. Got little cute drawings here and there in the book. It's a bit of a short read. It's only 300 pages. Next up, I have The Lies of Locke, Lamora by Scott Lynch. This is the 10th anniversary edition that I got. The plot of this book is that we follow Locke, who is a street orphan, and he comes under the tutelage of a really well-known con artist, one of the best con artists in the city, and he learns the ways of conning people. Locke rises and becomes the leader of an infamous group of light-fingered brothers, but there are other people in the city who have ambitions and goals, and Locke is getting in their way. I've heard really great things about the series. I'm very excited to read it. Oh no, my books fell. I should have seen that coming. I was making a big pile, now they all fell everywhere. I thought I was building such a good tower. Next up, I got Dawnshard by Brandon Sanderson. This is a novella that is part of the Stormlight Archive. I haven't read any of the Stormlight Archive books. It also has a very difficult plot to explain, so if you want to know what the Stormlight Archive is about, the first book is The Way of Kings, and I would definitely recommend reading the blurb on your own. Next up, this author only has 2 books. I have read her first book though, her debut, and I absolutely loved it. And this book that I got is Juniper and Thorn by Ava Reid. Now, I read The Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reid, and I absolutely loved it. It was a standalone, and I wished it wasn't a standalone because I really wanted more of the world, of the characters, and at first I thought this wasn't a book for me, but I do want to try it out just to see if it is. This is a fantasy horror based on the Juniper tree. Set in the same world as The Wolf and the Woodsman, this book follows a young witch who's trying to escape her abusive wizard father and find out who she is, find out her identity, and in the process she stumbles into a young man who she falls in love with. Next up, I have Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldry. This book you would have seen everywhere. It has gone really popular for being like a cozy fantasy novel. This book follows Viv, who is an orc that is retiring from her Dungeons and Dragons party-esque group. She has decided that life of fighting is not for her, and instead she wants to open up a coffee shop, but there's competition. This is like a fantasy, but make it cozy. I'm very curious if I'll enjoy this because usually I prefer the higher stakes, a lot of angst, a lot of drama in fantasy books. Might as well try it out. I'll never know until I try. So it's got the original cover on the inside here because this was originally an indie published book, but very excited to read this. Now, this book that I'm about to show you is the most ridiculous one I got. I love it to bits. It makes me laugh every time I see it. I just wanted to show everyone this. It's just so ridiculously big, and I just love how fat it is. I went and pulled this out at a coffee shop. Like, I just go sit down. I'm like, oh, I just want to have a little snack, drink some coffee. Let me pull out my book from my cute tote bag. But I want to just get a little bit of reading done. I sit down and I open this thing, and I'm like, let me start on the first page. Look at how ridiculous that looks. Don't I look like an absolute idiot? People would look at me and be like, what is this girl reading? That's so unnecessary. But I love it. I just love how big it is. It's a floppy as well, so the spine is not going to break, which I saw how big this was. I was like, that's going to destroy the spine. Look at that. Spine not breaking. It can literally lie flat. This is the perfect reading experience. This book will lie flat anywhere. I should tell you what this book is first. So this is the Inheritance Trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. Another N.K. Jemisin. I said I'm going to try out N.K. Jemisin, see if maybe she's my favorite author or not. So this is all 3 of the books in the Inheritance Trilogy bound up in one. The first book is called The 100,000 Kingdoms. I've seen that one in bookshops, but I wanted to get all 3 of them together like this. So I saw it on sale and I pounced. I got this for a really great price. So this book follows Yane Dar, who's an outcast from the barbarian north. But then her mother dies mysteriously and she is summoned to the city of Sky, where Yane is then named as heiress to the king. The throne is not easy to win though, and a vicious power struggle ensures. So that's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, don't forget to leave a like and hit subscribe. And if you want to be notified every time I upload, then turn on post notifications. If you want to find even more of me, you can follow me on Instagram. I'm very active on Instagram. I post a lot of things related to books, what books I'm reading, and I generally keep you more updated over there. I will see you next Sunday with another video, and yeah, bye guys!